She spoke to her grandmother in Japanese and lost her job the very next day. What exactly did this millionaire hear that got her fired? It was a slow afternoon at Juniper and Ash, a luxury hotel in Santa Monica. The halls were quiet. The air smelled like fresh flowers and lemon polish. Danielle Harper, a 27-year-old maid, moved through the hallway with her cart of towels and tiny soap bottles. She always wore a soft smile, even when no one looked. Danielle was careful, polite, and hardworking. She never showed up late. She never complained. And she always made sure each room was spotless. She was proud of her job, even if it wasn't her dream. It helped her pay bills and care for her grandmother, Obasan, who had raised her like a daughter. That day, Danielle's phone buzzed in her apron. It was Obasan calling. She looked left and right. No one was around. She stepped behind the service wall out of sight and answered quietly. "Moshi Moshi Obasan," she whispered. Her voice was soft, loving. "Hi Daijubu desu. Okay. Just working." A smile tugged at her lips. The call lasted just 30 seconds. Danielle promised to bring her grandmother green tea and mochi after her shift. Then she tucked the phone back in her pocket and returned to her cart. What she didn't see was Charles Remington III in the hallway nearby. Charles was tall, white-haired, and always wore a navy suit with shiny shoes. He was a millionaire tech investor and a regular guest at the hotel. People treated him like royalty. He walked like the world belonged to him. And when he heard Danielle speaking Japanese, he stopped. He didn't understand a word she said, but something about it made his face tighten. His blue eyes narrowed. He watched her closely from behind the corner. Then, without a word, he turned and walked toward the lobby. The next morning, Danielle came to work early like always. She tied her apron and began preparing her cart. But before she could start, her manager, Kendra, called her into the office. Danielle knocked gently. "Come in," Kendra said. Her face was stiff like stone. Danielle sat down slowly. "Danielle," Kendra began, folding her hands. "You've been doing a fine job. But we're letting you go." Danielle blinked. "Letting me go? Why?" Kendra sighed. "A guest complained. He said he heard you speaking another language on the job. That's not in line with our brand image." Danielle stared. "I wasn't in the hallway. I stepped behind the wall. It was my grandmother. She doesn't speak English well. I only said a few words." "I know," Kendra said. "It's not a rule you broke. But Mr. Remington was uncomfortable. And we have to protect the comfort of our guests." "But I didn't do anything wrong," Danielle whispered. "I'm sorry," Kendra said softly, but she didn't look sorry. "We've already taken you off the schedule." Danielle walked out of the office like her feet were floating. She didn't cry. Not yet. She just kept walking, past the fresh flower vases, past the fancy marble floors, past the bellboys who looked away. She sat outside on a bench and looked at her hands. She had folded towels. She had cleaned windows. She had smiled and said, "Good morning, sir. And enjoy your stay, ma'am." And now, she was gone. All for what? For speaking to Obasan. Later that night, at a small kitchen table, Danielle poured tea for her grandmother. "I lost my job today," she said softly. Obasan's eyes widened. "Why?" Danielle gave a sad smile. "Because I answered your call. Because I spoke to you in Japanese." Obasan's hand trembled as she held the teacup. "I'm sorry," she whispered. No, Danielle said quickly. "It's not your fault. Never your fault." But still, a heavy silence filled the room. The next day, her co-worker Milo called. "You okay?" he asked. Danielle hesitated. "Not really." Milo sighed. "That was messed up. Everyone knows you're the best worker there." "Thanks," she said, her voice barely a whisper. That evening, Milo sat on his couch, staring at his laptop. He opened a private group for hospitality workers and typed, "A black maid at my hotel got fired for speaking Japanese to her grandma for 30 seconds. She wasn't near guests. No rule was broken. Just one rich guy didn't like it. She's always been polite and professional. I'm so mad I could scream. He clicked post. He didn't expect what came next. Within 4 hours, the post had over 5,000 likes. By the next morning, it had gone viral. People all over the world were sharing it. Hundreds of comments poured in. This happened to my mom too. She was told not to speak Spanish at work. I'm native and I got written up for speaking my tribe's language in the break room. I'm crying. I thought I was the only one. Everyone was asking, who is this woman? What hotel did this? Who was the rich man? The anger kept growing. Protesters started gathering outside Juniper and Ash with signs that said, "Language is not a crime. Let Danielle speak. Justice for the maid." But Danielle didn't know any of this yet. She was sitting in her bedroom, holding her phone, staring at a message Milo had just sent her. "You need to see this. It's everywhere." Danielle sat on her bed, phone in her lap, eyes wide. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Milo had sent her a link. It led to a big post in a hospitality worker group. The headline read, "Black Hotel Maid Fired for Speaking Japanese to Her Grandmother." Under it was a short paragraph, Milo's words. He hadn't used her name. He didn't say the hotel's name either. But the story, it was hers. Danielle scrolled through the comments. "This is disgusting. She deserves justice. Let her speak her language. That rich guest should be ashamed." Her hands trembled. She wasn't sure how to feel. Was this good? Was it bad? Would she get in trouble? She called Milo right away. "Milo, you posted it." "Yeah," he said. "I was mad." "You didn't do anything wrong, Danny. People need to know. And look what's happening." Danielle sat up straighter. "People are talking about it." "Not just talking," Milo said. "They're angry. They're sharing it. It's moving fast." He wasn't lying. Within hours, the post had spread across social media. People on TikTok made videos about it. Twitter users created hashtags like #LetHerSpeak and #JusticeForDanielle. News blogs picked it up. Podcasts started mentioning it. One comment read, "Language is part of who we are. Firing someone for it is erasing their soul." Another said, "This sounds like Juniper and Ash. Rich people love it there. It fits." Danielle's heart skipped. Someone guessed the hotel. And then another person wrote, "I used to work there. It's true. They only care about guests. They don't stand up for staff." Bit by bit, people started connecting the dots. Juniper and Ash couldn't hide it for long. That night, Danielle received a text from a strange number. "Hi Danielle, I'm a reporter from Channel 7. I'd love to talk about your story." Another came in minutes later. "Hi Danielle, I run a podcast about injustice. May I interview you?" Danielle stared at her phone. She hadn't even said a word yet, and the world was already speaking for her. Meanwhile, outside Juniper and Ash, the protest had grown. People held up signs. "She deserved better. Our voice, our language. Fire Charles, not Danielle." They chanted, marched, and filmed everything on their phones. Hotel guests peeked out the windows, whispering. Inside, Kendra sat in her office with sweat on her forehead. Her phone buzzed nonstop. The hotel's owner had called 3 times already. And worst of all, Charles Remington III was angry. He had called earlier shouting, "This is going to ruin my name," he said. "That girl brought this mess." Kendra had tried to calm him down. "It's under control," she said. But deep down she knew it wasn't. The fire was spreading and they couldn't stop it. But Danielle still hadn't spoken publicly. She was scared. "What if people hate me?" she asked Milo. "What if they twist my words?" Milo shook his head. "They already love you, Danny. And you haven't even told your side yet." Danielle sat at her kitchen table, her fingers tapping against a teacup. Obason poured her a warm drink. "Everyone is waiting to hear your voice. Obeson said gently. Do not be afraid. Danielle looked into her grandmother's kind eyes. She remembered being 5 years old, sitting in Obeson's lap, learning how to say, I love you in Japanese. She remembered summer nights, making rice balls in the kitchen and laughing. She remembered how, even now, her grandmother struggled with English but never stopped trying. She wasn't just speaking a language on that call. She was speaking her love. That night, Danielle picked up her phone and opened a new post. She kept it short, but it was honest. I was fired for speaking Japanese to my grandmother. It was a short call. I didn't yell. I didn't break any rules. I just wanted her to know I was okay. That was the language she raised me in. The language of care. I don't want money. I just want the truth to matter. Danielle Harper. She hit post. And the world responded. Within minutes, the post exploded. People cried reading it. This broke me. She didn't deserve this. That last line. I just want the truth to matter. That hit hard. By morning, her post had been shared by activists, actors, authors, and even politicians. It was everywhere. Danielle woke up to find thousands of new messages. People thanking her. People sharing their own stories. People saying her name with pride. Danielle Harper, a maid who once cleaned rooms quietly, was now a symbol of something bigger. And then it happened. Someone posted Charles Remington III's name. Someone else posted a photo of him from the hotel's lobby. Then a journalist found one of his business interviews online. People were angry. More angry than before. He's the one who got her fired. Typical rich man thinking he owns the place. Let's cancel Charles. His name trended online. His company started losing followers. Some investors pulled away. Charles called Kendra again. I want this to go away, he said. But it was too late. The truth had a voice now. That same day, Danielle got an email from the hotel's legal department. We're offering a private apology and a financial settlement. In return, we ask that you agree to keep this matter confidential. Danielle stared at the message. They were offering her hush money. She closed her laptop and sat in silence. Obeson brought her a small bowl of miso soup. Danielle took a deep breath. No, she said quietly. They don't get to bury this. Danielle didn't want money to make the story disappear. She wanted truth. She wanted respect. She wanted people to know that speaking Japanese to her grandmother wasn't wrong. It was beautiful. It was love. She sat by the window, watching sunlight touch the flowers Obeson had planted. Her phone buzzed non-stop with interview requests, messages, and praise from strangers around the world. But Danielle didn't feel powerful. She felt nervous. Her hands shook as she held her tea. Obeson sat across from her, knitting in calm silence. After a moment she spoke. Do you know why the world is listening? Obeson said softly. Danielle looked up. Why? Because you didn't fight with anger. You spoke with love. Danielle thought about it. It was true. She hadn't screamed. She hadn't shouted. She had simply shared her truth, and the world felt it. That afternoon, she agreed to her first interview. It was a small podcast run by a young woman named Layla. The title of the episode was, She Spoke Japanese to Her Grandma, and Got Fired for It. Danielle spoke quietly but clearly. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't arguing. I was just checking on my grandmother. It was a short call. I didn't break any rule. Layla asked gently. Why do you think they fired you? Danielle hesitated. Then she said, because someone felt uncomfortable hearing a language they didn't understand. But that doesn't mean I did something wrong. I shouldn't have to hide my culture to be treated with respect. When the podcast aired, people flooded the comments. I'm crying. This is my story too. You're so brave. Thank you. Soon more invitations came in. TV interviews, news articles, panel events. Even a small university asked her to speak to their students about language and identity. Danielle couldn't believe it. Just a few days ago she was folding towels. Now people were clapping when she spoke. But not everyone was cheering. At the Juniper and Ash Hotel, the managers were panicking. Kendra sat in her office, staring at the screen. Danielle's podcast had 1.2 million plays in 24 hours. Guests were canceling bookings. Staff were asking questions. The hotel's reputation was falling fast. And worst of all, Charles Remington III's name was everywhere. One tweet said, "If I ever see Charles in a hotel lobby, I'm speaking every language I know out loud." Another read, "The way he tried to erase someone for speaking to her grandmother. Disgusting." Even Charles's own company made a public statement. "The views of Charles Remington III do not reflect our organization. We believe in inclusion, respect, and cultural celebration." Charles was furious. He called Kendra again. "You fix this or I will." But Kendra was stuck. The hotel had tried to silence Danielle with hush money. And she had refused. Danielle sat with Milo one evening, eating takeout on the floor. "You still think about going back?" Milo asked. "To the hotel." Danielle laughed softly. "Never. You know they're scared, right?" Milo said. "You're the storm now." Danielle smiled, but only a little. "I didn't want a storm," she said. "I just wanted peace." Milo looked at her. "And you're giving it to others who never had it." Danielle leaned back against the wall. "That makes it worth it." The next morning, a lawyer representing Juniper and Ash called Danielle's phone. "Danielle," the woman said politely, "we want to meet with you in person. To talk things through." Danielle agreed, but this time she brought someone with her. Her cousin, a law student named Zoe, sat beside her at the long glass table. The hotel's legal team and Kendra sat on the other side. "We want to offer a better settlement," the lawyer said. "More money, a formal letter of apology, and an NDA." Zoe interrupted. The lawyer nodded. "Yes, we'd ask you not to speak further about this." Danielle's face was calm. "No," she said clearly. Everyone froze. "I don't want money to keep quiet," she continued. "I want a public apology. I want you to admit why I was fired. And I want other workers to feel safe to speak their languages too." Kendra shifted in her seat. "That's a lot to ask," the lawyer said. Danielle nodded. "It is. But it's the right thing." Later that night, Kendra sat alone in her office. She looked at a photo on her desk of her own grandmother. She thought about the fear in Danielle's voice when she had been fired, and the strength in her voice now. The next morning, Kendra sent an email to the hotel's board. "We must take responsibility. Danielle deserves more than silence. She deserves justice." 2 days later, Juniper and Ash posted the following message on all their platforms. "We made a mistake. Danielle Harper was fired for speaking Japanese to her grandmother. A moment of connection, not misconduct. We apologize publicly and deeply for the harm caused. We will do better. Our staff has the right to speak their native languages without fear. We are listening. We are learning." Underneath, Danielle's photo appeared. She was smiling, not wide but calm. Free. That night her phone rang. It was Obason. Danielle answered with a laugh. "Obason. Did you see the post?" "Hi," Obason said. "I cried." Danielle switched the call to speakerphone, sat back, and let the soft Japanese words float through the room. "No more hiding. No more shame. Just truth. And love." The news spread quickly. The apology from Juniper and Ash was everywhere. On TV, in newspapers, and all over social media. People cheered for Danielle. Some cried. Some clapped. Some simply whispered, "Finally." But not everyone was happy. Charles Remington III was furious. He sat in his office, watching the hotel's public statement on his laptop. His face turned red. His hands gripped the armrests of his leather chair. "She embarrassed me," he growled. "A maid." His phone rang. It was his assistant. "Sir, would you like to make a statement to the press?" "No," Charles snapped. "This will all die down soon." But it didn't. Everywhere Charles went, people recognized him. They didn't say hello. They gave him cold stares. One day at a cafe, a young girl shouted, "Let people speak their language, you racist old man." Everyone turned to look. Charles left his coffee on the table and stormed out. Meanwhile, Danielle was living in peace. Not the quiet, tired peace she had before, but a proud, full kind of peace. The kind that came from speaking up and not being silenced. Still, her phone kept ringing. More reporters. More podcasts. Even a book publisher reached out. But Danielle took her time. She wasn't chasing fame. She just wanted to heal. She spent most of her days at home, cooking meals with Obasan. They made miso soup, sweet egg rolls, and steamed rice. As they cooked, they talked in Japanese with laughter and love. And when Danielle walked outside, people smiled at her. "Thank you for speaking up," one woman said. "You gave my daughter courage," said another. Danielle always smiled and nodded. She didn't want to be famous. She just wanted to be free. But one day, she got another letter from Juniper and Ash. This time it wasn't a threat. It was a check. Big one. The hotel was offering her $200,000 as a gesture of goodwill. But there was one condition. She had to sign an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement. That meant she would never speak publicly about the firing again. Not in interviews. Not in writing. Not ever. Danielle read the letter 3 times. Then she called Zoe, her cousin, the law student. "What do you think?" Danielle asked. Zoe didn't take long to answer. "They're scared. They want you quiet. But this check comes with a lock over your mouth." Danielle nodded slowly. She looked at the check again. $200,000 could change a lot in her life. But silence would change her heart. That night, she sat with Obasan. They watched a Japanese drama on the couch, sipping green tea. "I got an offer today," Danielle said. Obasan looked over. Danielle told her about the money, and the silence. Obasan didn't rush to answer. She sat still for a long time, then finally said, "Money is helpful. But your voice is stronger." Danielle smiled. She already knew the answer. The next morning, Danielle walked into the law office where the hotel's lawyers waited. Zoe walked beside her. Everyone sat at a large table. The hotel's lawyer slid the check across the glass surface. "This is a generous offer," the lawyer said. "We hope it can bring closure." Danielle didn't touch the check. "I'm not signing anything," she said gently. The room went quiet. "I don't want this money if it comes with silence," she continued. "What happened to me was wrong. I didn't break rules. I spoke to my grandmother. In a language she understands. I won't be ashamed of that. Ever." The hotel lawyer tried to smile. "You already got your public apology," she said. "What more do you want?" Danielle looked straight at her. "I want change. I want other workers to know they won't be punished for their heritage. I want policies written. I want training for your staff. I want this to never happen again." Kendra sat quietly. Then, for the first time, she spoke. "You're right." Everyone turned toward her. Kendra sighed. "We've been wrong before. We ignored voices. But you stood your ground. And I respect that." Danielle gave a small, polite nod. Kendra continued. "We'll make those changes. We'll put it in writing. You have my word." Danielle stood up and shook her hand. She left the check on the table. Some things were worth more than money. The next week, Juniper and Ash released a new post. "We are launching a language respect policy across all departments. All staff are free to speak their native language unless it interferes with direct guest needs. Staff will receive training in cultural awareness and inclusion. This begins now." Under the post, Danielle commented, "Thank you. Let this be the beginning of something better." Thousands of people liked her comment. The story, once filled with pain, was now filled with power. That weekend, Danielle received a small package at her door. Had no name. Inside was a handwritten note. "You didn't yell. You didn't beg. You just told the truth. And it shook the world. Someone who's listening." Danielle smiled. She didn't know who sent it. But she knew it was real. People were listening. And now, when she walked down the street, she held her head high. She wasn't just a maid anymore. She was a woman who stood up. For herself. For her grandmother. For everyone who had ever been told to be quiet just because of who they were. And that was worth more than $200,000. It was priceless. Danielle stood in front of a big silver counter. She wore a clean white apron, a tall chef's hat, and a quiet smile on her face. All around her, students in white coats chopped vegetables, stirred sauces, and practiced making perfect little desserts. Danielle was now a student at a culinary school, something she had always dreamed about but never dared to chase. Till now. After everything that happened, she had used part of the money she saved, and a scholarship a group had gifted her, to enroll in a one-year cooking program. She was finally learning to cook like a professional. But she wasn't just cooking to serve food. She was cooking to tell her story. On the first day of class, the instructor asked each student, "What kind of chef do you want to be?" Some said French cuisine. Others said pastries. When it was Danielle's turn, she stood tall and said, "I want to be a cultural chef. I want to share recipes that carry stories, especially from my family. I want food to speak where words cannot." The room was silent. Then everyone clapped. At home, Obeson was Danielle's first customer. Every week, Danielle cooked a new dish she learned and served it to her grandmother with care. She added her own twist. Japanese dishes mixed with the soul food she grew up with in America. Miso-glazed yams. Fried rice with black-eyed peas. Sweet bean pies with matcha cream. Obeson always clapped after the first bite. "Delicious," she said in Japanese every time. Danielle laughed. "You always say that." "Because it's always true," Obeson replied. Danielle also started a blog. At first, she only posted photos of her meals with short stories about her grandmother. She called it Obeson's Kitchen Table. But soon people from all over the world found it. They weren't just hungry for food. They were hungry for her words. They read about how she grew up learning Japanese while eating cornbread. They read about losing her job for a 30-second phone call. They read about how she refused to be silenced. And they stayed because Danielle didn't write like a chef. She wrote like a granddaughter, like a human, like someone who had something to say and finally said it. One day, a woman from a publishing company reached out. "We love your voice," she said. "Would you consider writing a cookbook with your stories in it?" Danielle said yes. And so began her next journey. Months passed. The protests faded. The hotel moved on. Charles Remington III resigned quietly from several of his business boards. People forgot his name. But they didn't forget Danielle. Not because she shouted. Not because she sued. But because she stood up, and then built something new with her own two hands. Her blog reached 1 million views. Her first recipe video, miso-glazed sweet potatoes, was shared by a famous chef online. She was invited to speak at cultural events, food festivals, and colleges. But she never changed. Danielle still made tea for Obeson every night. She still answered every call with, "Moshi Moshi Obeson." And she still smiled at strangers on the street. Now though, many of them smiled back and whispered, "Thank you." One day, Danielle was invited to return to Juniper and Ash. Not as an employee. As a guest. A young hotel manager named Marissa had taken over and reached out with kindness. "I know what happened to you here was wrong," she wrote. "But we want to show how we've changed. Would you consider hosting a small food event in our garden? Share your story. Serve your dishes. Let people taste your journey." Danielle thought about it for days. Then she said yes. The event was simple. White tables. Soft lights. Music playing gently. Danielle stood behind a long table with a row of dishes. People walked up, grabbed plates, tasted her food, and listened. They listened to her talk about her grandmother. About the phone call. About being fired. About refusing to sign that NDA. About cooking through her pain. And about using her voice to feed others, not just with food but with truth. At the end of the night, there was quiet applause. And one person, an older woman, walked up with tears in her eyes. "My daughter speaks Arabic," she whispered. "Your story helped her feel safe again." "Thank you." Danielle gave her a gentle hug. "You're welcome," she said. That night, Danielle and Obasan sat on their tiny porch under the stars. Obasan sipped her tea and said, "The world knows your name now." Danielle smiled. "I just wanted them to hear your voice," she said. They sat in silence for a while. Then Obasan asked, "If you could go back and change anything, would you still answer that phone?" Danielle didn't hesitate. "I would answer it every single time." She didn't win a fight with fists. She didn't make threats. She didn't break anything. She spoke to her grandmother, in a language full of love, and lost her job. But what came next changed her life forever. Danielle's truth fed the world. And it tasted better than anything she could have imagined. End.